All right, then I'm gonna switch to English. So, kas keegi on, kes ei saa üldse inglise keelest aru? Okay, väga hea. I'm gonna tell you what to expect. So first, we're gonna do a short interview with our guest, who'll be here very soon. And during the interview, we'll have a QR code here. So if you have any questions that I'm not asking, you can submit them, and then I might still not ask them, but if they're really good, then who knows? And then I think it will be about like 45 minutes, depending on how interesting stuff comes up. I don't know. We'll see. And then we're going to have a short coffee break, and then you're going to work in teams or alone, depending whether you came with your church team or your other team or alone. We also have those physical like worksheets where you can write some stuff down if you want to. So it will be super practical. And after that, we're going to share a bit what you wrote down, what were the main takeaways for you, your church, your team, and then we're going to end the night. We will be done in less than 3 hours, so if you have any plans at 9, you will make it, hopefully. But okay, you can come to stage. I made a separate slide. Ta-da!
Oh, wonderful.
If you're not following him yet, please scan this QR code now and do it. But okay, first of all, I will tell you a little backstory. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago when one of my friends sent me an Instagram message. Oh, are you following this guy? And I was like, of course I'm following this guy. And that was, did you say Brady or Brady?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Brady. So I've been following him on Instagram for quite a long time, and one day randomly there was this Instagram story. Oh, I'm coming to the Baltic states. Is there anyone who's following me from there? Let's grab a coffee or something. Yeah, so that was the highlight of that day for sure, or week or month. So I just sent him a message like, yeah, we are waiting you here in Estonia. And then it felt that it would be too selfish to just meet with you, maybe just our church. So we wanted to do something so more of the churches and teams could benefit from your presence. All right, but let's start. So tell a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where you come, what's your background, and that's the slide for your questions and comments. Like if you have anything else that you want to ask, just you can do it. I have them here. So yeah, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say I'm so happy to be here. Extend my thanks to Hannah especially, and everyone that contributed to putting this together, our gracious hosts here in this wonderful building. We've been in your area of the world for roughly 10 days now. We flew into Helsinki, and the plan was to work our way south through all of the Baltic states. After seeing Helsinki for a brief day or two, we ended up making a little detour, and instead of Estonia being our first stop, it is our last stop, so we head home tomorrow. As for me, so myself, I'm Canadian. I'm 34 years old, married. I have 2 daughters. And I grew up in the church. I grew up in also a Baptist church, very, very small Baptist church in Canada. Similar to right now, we did not have any microphones. We did not have any electronics at all. Pastor spoke from a nice wooden pulpit. We all sat on uncomfortable wooden pews. We had 2 acoustic guitars. That's not true. We had 1 acoustic guitar. On special weekends, we had 2. We did have an overhead projector. That was kind of our big thing. So my role in tech and media growing up was changing the papers in time to make sure that the chorus going into the bridge was readable by everyone. So growing up in that world, I didn't really feel like I had an affinity for faith, but my parents were really measured and balanced Christians. And so they didn't just take me to church, but they also demonstrated what the love of Jesus meant in our home. And so I got connected to a Pentecostal youth group in high school. And that was where I was introduced to a different faith tradition, one that felt a lot easier for me to understand and grasp. And there was a lot of energy, and there was a lot of young women as well, which was brand new because there was only old people in my church. And growing up, I was very academic focused and very sport focused as well. I never really fit in with the nerds, as we might call them, or the jocks, as we might call them. The church in high school was the first place ever that I felt like belonging as a human being, with all my eccentricities and all my uniqueness, let's call it generously. I met my now wife in that youth group, and a bunch of me and my friends, when we graduated, we had been so impacted by this youth group that we were like, man, it would be really cool if we also worked in church. So we all went to Bible college. We moved across our giant country to the chagrin of my parents and my girlfriend at the time's parents, and we went to Bible college. So I have my degree in youth ministry and theology. About a year or two into studying this, though, I kind of realized that being a full-time pastor wasn't something that I thought would be a good fit for me. The phrase that I like to use is I just didn't think I had the relational bandwidth for it. I would be in like an internship at a youth ministry, and I would see how much time the youth pastor was spending with the students and how much time they like deserved and needed going to their sports games, and just being on the phone with them whenever they needed, having relationship problems, whatever it might be. And as much as I loved that work, I would get home and I would just be like exhausted. It would take me like days to recover. And I started to realize, okay, maybe my personality is not best suited for this. So then I'm at a bit of a crossroads, because all I've ever wanted to do in my life is like work in church and serve in church. But I'm starting to realize that maybe my personality and God-given skills do not align perfectly with the traditional roles in church. This is like 2010. And I'm in this class in Bible college, and they have this tool on this computer called Pro Presenter. And it was like, this is the overhead projector of the future. And I was like, look at this amazing tech. I'd never seen anything like it. And this world of creative communication, creative ministry was introduced to me for the very first time. And still then, in 2010, in a city of about 1 million people, and I'm quite confident that it is more south than where we live now, but it's the most northern major metropolis on my continent in North America. It's like 6 months of winter. We don't plow the roads. -40 Celsius is not uncommon. I don't know if you guys have to do this, but we have to plug our cars into like electric outlets at night. Otherwise, they just won't start in the morning because it gets that cold. So, I am with like-minded people tonight, climate-wise at the very least. So creative communication starts, I start finding some interest in it. And I start a new internship at a new church plant. And they put a camera in my hands and they say, you're going to be our media director. And I'm like, what's that? They're like, we don't really know, we're a church plant, but go for it. So I start taking this camera and I'm making videos and I'm learning all these skills. And then I go back to my classes and I'm realizing that my friends and classmates who are going to go on to be senior pastors at like tiny churches in rural Canada, or youth pastors or worship pastors, they are going to be given the same task that I was when I started at this church plant, which in 2010 was, can you start a Facebook page for our church? And so I thought, okay, if I can learn these skills, maybe other people can as well. It's not so hard. So I started this website, prochurchtools.com, which is the worst name ever. The way I came up with it was the best man at my wedding basically like put, before AI, the word pro and church into a generator and said, come up with like a bunch of different variations. And the best one we thought was prochurchtools.com. The domain was available, so I bought it. And so I start teaching everything that I know. We started a YouTube channel, we started a podcast, started social platforms. And basically we just kept doing that for 10 years till to this date. We celebrated 10 years as a company last year, so 11 years at the end of this month, just next week basically. And we started as just me. I had a collapsible green screen that I would set up in my 1-bedroom apartment, first year of marriage, and then we'd have to tear it down so we could have dinner. And eventually, our team grew, went from a 1-person team. I hired my first roommate from Bible college, then I hired a bunch of my friends from youth group, and so the first 6 employees at our company were friends of mine that I've known since I was like 13 years old. And a lot of us got like saved in youth group, and now we've been running this company, and now a bunch of them all have kids and mortgages and families. And we've grown. Now we're a team of about 30. We have a stateside location. We have a Canadian location. The one thing that stayed consistent in this very long-winded answer to your question is that we've kept creating free resources for churches. We believe that anyone can take the message of Jesus and share it as we navigate this, what we call biggest communication shift in 500 years. The tools that we have at our disposal now are truly amazing and also truly frightening. And so using them for good is, of course, the responsibility of us as believers.
That's very good that you mentioned tools. We're coming back to that later. But okay, one question. But why are you in that area? Like, why did you pick, looked at the globe, Eastern Europe, awesome. Or where did that come from?
Yeah, so I love to travel. I have always loved travel. When I was very, very poor, I remember signing up for a bunch of credit cards and getting all their points, and then getting a flight for my wife and I to Florida, which was the coolest thing ever. And so as the company's grown and as travel has become more accessible, we just want to keep seeing the world. On the business front, we come to different locations and we film the beautiful landscapes in beautiful cities.
So it's a business trip.
Look, that's, if the Canadian Revenue Agency asks you, yes, it's a business trip. And this is my colleague, Pastor Justin. He's the pastor at our church. In terms of this specific location, I do have an affinity for the Northern European countries. I've been to every Scandinavian country save for Greenland.
Now you have been. We consider ourselves Scandinavian.
Oh, yes, as well. On our walking tour today, I heard a little bit about how, a little less to do with maybe Latvia and Lithuania, a little more to do perhaps with Finland. So that was interesting. In terms of there's a bit of an ancestral connection as well. Justin and I both come from Mennonite families. And before the Mennonites migrated to Canada, we lived in what is kind of modern day Ukraine. And so my grandparents, when I ask them about our history, a lot of it has to do with being persecuted in that area by the enemy that you are also very well aware of, and then us moving to Canada after we petitioned the Canadian government, please, we're the Mennonite sect comes from the Anabaptists, so very non-violent believers in Jesus, but had nowhere to go. So eventually we landed in Canada, in the worst part of Canada, which is a lot of Canada, very big country. We all live in one spot because we try to get as far south as we can. So that's why we're here. We've had an amazing time. Just a few quick anecdotes about our time here. We landed in Estonia at the airport yesterday. We get in our Uber, and Justin says to the Uber driver, he says, "This is our first time in Estonia." And the driver says, "So?" And I was like, yeah, okay, that's about to be expected. So I think that the dry humor and the dry wit and the honesty, Canadian politeness is quite, famous. We smile a lot. We say sorry a lot. We're very polite. And if someone asks you, how are you doing? I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Here, it's how are you doing? It's fine is the best that we've gotten so far, which is honest, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we don't lie because we're Christians.
Yes, of course.
But all right, now let's get practical. So your background, as you described, I felt it was very similar to where I come from, a small Baptist church where I switched the sheets. It's core memory somewhere. Yeah. But let's say this church has evolved a bit, so maybe now they have a real projector, and maybe they even have some, I don't know, drums maybe. But it's still a small church, about 40, 50 people. How could they, the church, the unknown church, use media meaningfully?
So in terms of church size, I always think it's useful to contextualize what is normal. Obviously, North America, the States in particular, is considered to have really big churches. But even there, the median church size is sub 100. So if the a typical church that you said is 40 or 50. In the States, a typical church is 70 or 80. It's not a dramatic difference in terms of what it's like to lead and serve in an organization of that size. In terms of using media meaningfully, there are so many different avenues. The first one that comes to mind is discovery via social media. The era of social media that we're in right now, I like to call the discovery era. And if you remember the previous era of social, what we would call that is the social graph era. The social graph era was marked by really only your friends and family were your connections on social. If you remember back then, There was no like ability to really reach people beyond the people that chose to follow you or chose to be your friends. And then in 2018, this new platform comes along, TikTok, and it introduces this brand new way of doing social, where instead of connecting to your friends and family, what you were seeing on your feed was based on your interests, your local location, and your viewing habits. And it was such a revolutionary way of doing social, and it was so popular amongst young people specifically, those that drive social trends, every single platform copied them. And so this ushered in this new era that we call the discovery era. And what's amazing about this era is that your church now has the ability to introduce yourself to people in your local community who do not follow you. You don't have to spend money on ads to do this. And you know, we work with about 150 churches every week creating their social content. And so sometimes I'll hear, you know, these stories. We started working with this one church and they came to me and they said, all I want is for people to know my church exists in my neighborhood. Like, we've been here for like 30 years and people don't even know we're at church. And I was like, okay. And this pastor was bivocational. So like he had a real job and then he also was a pastor. Not to suggest that a pastor is not a real job, of course. And within the first month, he comes back to me and he says, I was working at my job and this guy came up to me. I work with him like, you know, once a month. And he asked me like, are you a pastor? Because like I saw you on my TikTok feed. And then he was at the grocery store and he did like grocery delivery. So he went to go pick up the groceries. And he was getting all frustrated because he was like late and his wife had an appointment to get to and the groceries were delayed. Anyway, you know, this young person walks up to him carrying a bunch of grocery bags and says, oh my goodness, are you a pastor? I just moved to the area. My wife and I, we're checking out your church this Sunday. And that is illustrative of the local discovery component of social media right now. I can't tell you how many times this has happened to me where I've like followed a creator for the longest time and then they'll mention like something about Canada and I just assumed they were American, but they weren't. Like they lived, 20 kilometers down the street from me. I was at my father's like 60th birthday celebration and we were at this restaurant and the server comes up and I was like, oh my goodness, like I follow this guy on TikTok. This is unsettling. When it's your server at the Brazilian steakhouse, it's less, cool than when it's a pastor, I suppose. But the point is, what's now possible on social is even more important and potentially like dramatically important for your church than even 5 to 10 years ago. Because what was true 5 to 10 years ago is that if you wanted to reach people outside of your sphere of influence, people that chose to connect with you online, you'd have to spend money on ads, let's say. And we can talk so much about what's possible even with your existing congregation on social, but I always like to highlight the ability to have your church introduced to new people. And it can be harder in metro areas where population density is like really strong. If I was if we were in Philadelphia right now in the States and we were having this same conversation, we would have to talk about some different nuances. But my belief is that in a city like Tallinn, similar to a lot of Canadian cities, where like Christianity is not this huge presence, I think if you're active on social and consistently active, which is really the singular non-negotiable of social, what we call no weeks off, you can introduce your church to new people, make them aware of you for the first time, and that is often the first point of contact that can become those people checking you out, becoming fully integrated parts of your church community. Social's amazing at kind of that first touch, and then what we do in person is really amazing for building relationship, connecting people to God in meaningful ways, and then seeing them become more like Jesus.
That's a very good point, that it's good for the first touch. But if we're planning content on our social media channels, do you think it's also important to do something beyond the first touch? Is social media also a place for helping people to grow spiritually? For example, if we're planning content with our church, what should we keep in mind? Should we keep in mind only to, let people know that we exist? Or is there something more that we should be doing with the content?
I think one of the best things that we can do is repurpose sermon content. If I was working with helping churches, if I was helping like dentists with social media or real estate agents or lawyers, I'd be talking to the leader of the organization, and that person would have to clean teeth or sign contracts or sell homes, and then they would have to like contend with social media and the internet after that. What's really cool about church is that, yes, we are smaller than most businesses. We don't have the same budgets as businesses. Like, that's all true. And we're all very aware of that. One thing I don't think we highlight as much is this key advantage we have. We have senior leaders every single week spending hours creating content that we call sermons, and that's baked into the rhythm of church life every single week. And so, like, the hardest part of creating content for the internet, which is like coming up with the ideas, is done for us. And what's amazing about the wisdom of Scripture is that it's for all people, for all time. So what that means is we can repurpose that sermon for people that know Jesus and publish that online, but for people that have no faith background whatsoever. If you think about what are the themes in Scripture, it's things like redemption and purpose and hope and destiny and forgiveness, and there's a ton on finances and parenting and relationships, all the types of things that matter to every single human, doesn't matter if they have a faith yet or not. And so we can take those sermons that are already made, we can repurpose them in the form of videos, in the form of quotes, in the form of carousels, like long form. You know, we can transcribe, we can turn it into blog posts, we can publish it on YouTube. There's so many different ways that we can extract that information and then share it. I think that digital ministry is at its best when it is a nice supplement to what we do in person. And I think this is another important emphasis to make. Despite dedicating my professional life to creative ministry and digital ministry in particular right now in this time and place, what we do in person as churches is something that is becoming more and more rare in culture. Loneliness, anxiety, isolation, unfortunate byproducts, let's say, of this new digital age, especially with young people, higher than has ever been true, in recorded history that we're aware of. And so the church and its ability to bring together people from all different backgrounds, different ages, different demographics, different socioeconomic groups, that is something that doesn't happen in any place in culture right now. And so what we do online is almost always at its best when it becomes a conduit to bring people in person. So I wouldn't say, to your specific question, that I would put too much on social for its ability to truly disciple people or truly develop people into followers of Christ. But it's really great at discovery, like we talked about, and then also being a springboard into deeper connection. What's amazing about Instagram, let's say, is its ability to take a sermon of yours after you've repurposed it and share it with 100,000 people, which is more people than you could ever get in any building, basically. It's great at width, it's not so great at depth. And so when we're using social platforms, we want to basically cast as wide a net as we can and then give people opportunities to take steps towards our church or take steps towards Jesus that are deeper. So let's use one simple but practical example. In church, let's say I have a sermon reel and it's 90 seconds. At the very end of the sermon reel, I might have a prompt on the screen that says, comment parent, if the subject of that sermon reel is dedicated to parenting and what the scriptures say about it, and we'll send you the full message over DM. So we do this with some of the churches that we work with. So presumably, you're scrolling through Instagram. Maybe you are a follower of this church, maybe not. Maybe you know Jesus, maybe you don't. And you see a sermon reel, and the caption at the beginning says 2 words you should never say to your kids. What's great about that is that it's going to get to the wisdom of Scripture, but its presentation and the way we've contextualized it is accessible to anyone. We're all either a parent or the child of a parent. And so we're like, oh yeah, what shouldn't my parents have said to me? And so you stop your scroll, which is the prerequisite, right? We have to gain people's attention on social. You stop scrolling and you watch through the 30, 60, 90 seconds. That hook, as we'd call it, is so crucial because that person that stopped scrolling, they didn't see the other 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of that sermon. They have no context for what this is about. So you have to basically make a promise to them and say, this is what you're going to get if you stick around. So they're watching through, and they get to the end. And if you've done your job, not only have you stopped their scroll and gained their attention, but you've delivered on the promise. If we get to the end of that video and you never reveal the 2 words, that's no good. But let's say you've done that. And it's profound because, again, it's pulled from the wisdom of Scripture. You're repurposing the message that your senior pastor, your lead pastor, put all that work into. Now at the end, there are opportunities for this specific person to take a next step. maybe you put onto the screen, comment parent, we'll send you the full message. Now you send them the full message on YouTube. Now they're not watching 90 seconds, they're watching the full 30 minutes. Or perhaps you don't always need to make these calls to action explicit, especially everyone in this room, like we're familiar with social, we know what to do. Maybe we're so interested in this, we click on the actual handle and we see, oh, who is this church? Where are they? Where are they located? And you choose to follow them. So now you're connected to them. You're more likely to see their next post. And so social, which starts as this discovery point, can lead to greater connection over time.
But you mentioned that you can use maybe the sermon. Do you also brief the people who preach, like, we need a hook, like, say something that we could cut out?
My belief is that I never want to tell a church to change what they're doing in person for the purpose of online. Ideally, we can let them do what they do in person, and then we as digital creatives, we can basically repurpose what they've done. What I found is when these work well, a lead pastor will begin to kind of like understand how things translate. For some people, this comes naturally. For some, it's a learned skill. For some, it will never come naturally. We edit 150 plus sermons every single week for churches, different denominations, different church sizes, different languages. And I have never found difficulty, so long as the sermon is Bible-based, finding a part that is at, we would call, the intersection of faith and culture. That's the sweet spot, the intersection of faith and culture. Find that and then repurpose it. It needs the hook. I think that's our job to write, because when we're making sermon content for social, it's not our responsibility to create a mini recap of the full 30-minute sermon. We're basically looking for like individual moments. And interestingly, I've found that it's often the moments that were never even maybe in the sermon notes that end up making it to social. There's an anecdote I heard from one of the great film directors, Martin Scorsese. He would do this thing, and continues to do this thing, where let's say he's directing a movie, and Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, right? Okay, so one of the best directors of our time, one of the best actors of our time. And what Scorsese would do is he would cue up actors, and he would tell one of the actors one thing, but he wouldn't tell the other actor. And then says action, and you get the moment where it's like real. And we've all seen those like behind the scenes where like, this was a improv line in this movie, they didn't plan it, and that's what ended up in the final cut. And I found that anecdote so fascinating, because you have like the best directors and the best actors, and despite that, it was the part that was truly real in the moment that they used. Similarly, in sermons, sometimes your pastor's on stage, your pastor's preaching, and they'll say, hey, this isn't in my notes, and then they go into something. Maybe they feel it in the moment, maybe it's the Holy Spirit speaking to them, whatever it might be. It's often those moments that are absolutely the best moments for social, because it's like this unscripted, truly real thing in the moment. Not always, but something to look out for.
Yeah, nice. I really like the culture and faith crossroad. That's a really, really good takeaway. But let's go really practical. Let's say that you are part of a church, you are in the media team, but by the way, you also play drums, in the worship, you do Sunday school, so you do lots of things. But 3 hours a week, you would dedicate to do something with your media stuff. What would you do with those 3 hours?
Well, I was on media, and I did play drums, and I did lead worship, and I did work in Sunday school. So we all wear multiple hats in church. It's not unfamiliar to any of us. I think in terms of like low time effort, big impact, the best thing is photography. And the amazing thing about photography with the tools that we have now, and I know on my phone in my pocket, it's back there, is that we can create and capture stunning photos, and all we have to have is our phone. So if you have a camera, great. I have a bunch with me. But we have a free course on YouTube called the Church Smartphone Photography Masterclass. You can track it down. We go to Australia, and we take our phone, and all we did was do photo shoots at churches with just our phone to prove like how you can capture amazing looking photos using just our mobile devices. So this is one of the things that I like to emphasize, because it requires $0. It almost requires like not a ton amount of skill, especially if you're younger and you're very familiar with taking pictures on your phone. It's more of a skill that's more natural. Even Gen Z finds it way more naturally than even my generation. And, sidebar here, it's amazing to see what kind of like the generation behind me, I'm a millennial, are creating with digital ministry, because like I remember growing up without any of that. My house had a rotary phone, like literally spin the numbers, believe it or not. I'm only 34. And this generation behind me, my younger cousins, like their ability to create stuff that comes like naturally is just truly amazing. So all you use is your phone. The amazing thing about photography in church especially is one, you can communicate in an instant with a photo what would take paragraphs worth of text. So imagine someone lands on your website. When we talk about website design, what we always tell churches is you want big photo containers as the primary emphasis on your website. Because when I land on your church's website, I want to get an instant feel for what your community is like in an actual service, what it's like to actually attend. Because that's what church does. The church is the people. Right? So if I was evaluating a restaurant to visit after tonight, I might look up, oh, what do some of the dishes actually look like? So, oh, that looks tasty. As churches, we don't have a product per se in the way a restaurant would. Our product is that like we are in the people business. We care about people's souls. We care about creating community. We care about creating places for people to belong and rub shoulders with others and worship God together. That's our shared purpose. And the only, in my mind, acceptable visual embodiment of that is photos of like people doing that. And so it's like the most powerful thing that can be extremely affordable, basically free. Plaster those photos all over your website. And then they also become incredibly useful social media posts, whether it's just a carousel or a still post. Those are the types of things that we also want to incorporate in our social media publishing calendars. They're also great for like if you want to make like a graphic for a pre-service slide, like having the backdrop be a photo, amazing. Let's say, you know, I don't know if this is popular here, but like we do a lot of summer camps at my church and in my area because similarly, we have a very small window of nice weather. We're like, okay, bring all the kids together and we're gonna have like water fun outside. So like if we're gonna promote that, we could create like a graphic with like, you know, a cartoon like water gun on it or something and, you know, have the name of the event and the time and the date or a lot more powerful, impactful, a photo from last year's summer camp with, you know, a single link on the screen or a QR code or like minimal amount of data. What we always say with creative ministry is inspiration over information. If you think about a movie trailer, Mission Impossible is coming out next week, okay? Like they do a lot of stuff in Europe, right? Like over the many, many films. If you go and see the Mission Impossible trailer, what are they gonna do? The entire 90 seconds is gonna tell you the show times and where the movie is playing, right? No, they would never do that. What they're gonna do in 90 seconds is show you the coolest parts of the film to hopefully inspire you to go see it. And at the very end, they'll say coming soon. And guess what? We can all find the times for the movie if we really wanna go. And what do we do in church announcements? We stand up there and we like read off a giant checklist of like, this is happening on this day, in this place, at this time. Everyone's asleep, nobody cares, and nobody takes action. If we focus on inspiration with our website design, with our social media posts, with our graphics, with our church announcements, with communication, we can trust and rely on people to track down the information, so long as we have a place, one place ideally, where they can get all the information they need, in the same way that we can track down the showtimes to see the final Mission Impossible movie.
Nice. Let's get even more practical. You mentioned that taking photos is free, but your lead pastor now tells you that we will give you $300 euros this year for your media team. Use it wisely. What will you do?
$300. I think I would probably, very practical, buy a DJI Mic 2 kit. This is basically what Hannah and I are wearing right now. So she has one on her lapel. I have a lapel plugged into mine, but my actual receiver is right here. We have these exact same mics with us on this trip, and we've been filming all of our videos using them. 300 euro is not quite enough to get you a camera like the one that's filming me right now, or the ones that we have with us. That's like, you know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 euro. And the problem with our silly little phones is that they're so good, a 300 euro camera is like, at that point I'm just like, just use your phone. Like a modern day iPhone can shoot 4K log footage, which is a little bit technical, but the first camera I used when I was a media director in 2010 was a Canon T3i. And like the footage coming out of the phones these days makes that camera, which was a 1,000 Canadian dollar camera, so like a 500 euro camera, like makes it look like It's so bad, I can't even think of anything. So if we're talking about 300 euro, what is one thing that we could do that would be useful in a lot of different contexts? And the thing about creating videos is that reasonable, average quality video we can get away with. But if your audio is not clear, the video is ruined. Audio is the one discipline in videography as a whole that you really can't skimp on. And what's amazing about these lavalier mics, these lapel mics, is that they have like either a little clip, so you can clip them on. They have magnets, so we would use them where I'll put a magnet kind of underneath my shirt and it'll just stick there and just like float. The great thing about tiny mics is that Gen Z has embraced them as an acceptable prop. So when I was growing up, you had to hide lapel mics. And you can do that. You know, we've plugged in this little guy here. Sometimes you can run it under your shirt, you know, hide it underneath there. But I often just hold my tiny mics now. Team Tiny Mic, like embrace it, it's a trend. And now, what's also cool about this kit is it has 2 mics. So if you have 2 people talking, so it just makes videography a lot easier to create. Back in the day, we would have like boom mics, like hovering boom mics. There was a whole big production. So that, I think it costs like 200 euro. So let's go with that. Nice,
very good suggestion. Now let's jump to a bit different topic. Let's talk about the media team itself. As you mentioned, usually, as I mentioned, you agreed, usually the people in the media teams are always occupied with other things as well in the church, but also outside of the church. But let's say that you're lucky enough to have a team. What are some of the tips how to keep the team motivated, how not to burn out your precious teams from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, the rhythm of church is you usually have a small group of volunteers that are doing all the work. And my sense is that most people in this room are that small group. Everyone, including all of us, but everyone that you work alongside, that you oversee, wants 2 things, and that is they want to be known and needed. I talked about my experience in youth group. Why was it so impactful for me? Before the whole like, hey, here's this thing about Jesus that you need to actually know and care about, what got me first was just the fact that they accepted me for who I was. They made me feel known. I didn't feel like a strange person or a weirdo. And then as I got more involved and I was doing things, I felt needed. And when you have a place where you feel both of those things, it's incredibly powerful. So there are, of course, specific practical considerations because everyone's personality is different. So the first thing that I work on with the team that I'm leading is understanding them and what makes them tick, what makes them unique. And then it's my job as the leader to make them feel known. The needed part is interesting. We had one person on our team who I had put in charge of a specific project. And the project was important, but it was also a project that was like winding down. And it wasn't, let's say, incredibly important. And this person was like just struggling on this project because they didn't feel like it was crucial to the goals of our organization. When I put this same person with no different skills onto a project that I told them, I was like, this is incredibly important. It was like their entire personality changed because they felt needed for the first time. Like, hey, if I don't come through on this, these are the consequences. Same person, same abilities, same amount of time that they were allotted, but now they were empowered in a way that they weren't previously. And I think like everyone can look at the resources we have and be like, oh, this person isn't as reliable as I'd like. This person isn't as skilled as I'd like. You know, Justin and I, as we've spent the last, 10 days together traveling, we oversee different teams. And we've each been like working because when you manage teams of like dozens, it feels like I get less and less time to actually do the work that I love. And I'm just like managing the team as they do work. And different people have different things and they'll make you feel irritated or frustrated in different ways. And I always remind myself like, okay, how can I make this person feel more known or more needed? And then the other reminder that I give myself, and I think this has a unique parallel with church, because if you remember, my company, I just hired all my friends from high school. Believe it or not, we were not well equipped to run a company at the beginning. Because none of us had the skills. Now, the good thing was me as CEO of a 3-person company, it didn't really matter because I was learning on the job with them as well. And what happened was we didn't have the competency that we needed in a lot of different areas. What I've learned is that confidence is usually what comes first before competence. when I was a media director at my church plant. My pastor, when he put that camera in my hand and he said, hey, go make a video. Like I had no skills. I had never held a real camera before, but he believed in me. And that like belief basically bought me enough time to believe in myself to then prove it with skills that I had not yet developed. And the first time I went out to film with this camera, it was an utter failure. I was in this major metropolis, like 1 million people. I take this camera, we didn't have a tripod, but the video that I was trying to create was like this time lapse. And we needed time lapse footage. So I take this camera and I go up to a major intersection and I take it and I just like put it on an electrical box because we didn't have a tripod, but I needed it to like stay still. And I'm running it on what we call an intervalometer internally in the camera. So I'll just stand back and it'll take photos on a prescribed every 3 seconds, let's say. So I'm out there with my roommate at the time. There is no company, he's not been hired yet. I'm engaged, unmarried, second year of Bible college. We've been out there 10 minutes and I hear police sirens. And this police officer walks up behind me and he says, hey son, what are you doing? Because this is 2010 and it is strange to have a camera out in public. And I say, oh, well, I'm taking photos of cars to make a video for my church. And he goes, sure you are. Yeah, he didn't believe that. And he said, you know, please stop and go home. And we weren't doing anything illegal, but it was so strange that it just felt like this is probably a youth that's up to no good. So please go home. I remember getting back to my apartment and I just was like, this is not for me. That was the most embarrassing thing I've ever had. I'm not gonna be a youth pastor. I'm obviously not gonna be a media director. I'm having a crisis of personal identity. And after those emotions had calmed down and I realized, hey, like, you know, that was just, we didn't do anything wrong. It was just a bad encounter. I said to myself, okay, there was a church video that I was trying to copy and I was trying to make. And I said to myself, those people didn't go to jail and they made that video. I can make the video. So we just stationed ourselves a little bit farther from the intersection next time and we made the video and the video was great. And the first 5 attempts of me stitching together photos into a time lapse did not work. They were jittery. The frame was not straight. The motion blur was wrong. I tried again and again and again and again. On like the 7th try, I achieved the intended effect that I wanted from the video that first inspired me. And the belief that my pastor had basically given me to get through that near jail experience, right? Like scary. And just keep trying, bought me enough time to when I made the video and he said, wow, this is way better than I anticipated it could have been. Now, for the first time, I had confidence and competence. And then it becomes this like positive snowball where it starts with confidence and you try something and you achieve it. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna try something a little harder next time. And you just keep better and better and better. And so you as the leader, it's your responsibility to put the people beneath you onto that positive reinforcing cycle, because it can work in the inverse too. We've all seen this with people where like they failed something and now the identity they've kind of ascribed to themselves is I am a failure, I cannot do this, and they're on the opposite way. So confidence, breeding competence after. Yeah.
Nice, thank you. So we're almost out of time, but we've got some quite good questions from you guys.
Okay, I promise I will do my best. Like we can rapid fire, and when we get into the groups and stuff, I'm just gonna be like stopping by each group, so like you will have my captive attention then, so we can, you know, I'll be here as long as you want. Answer everyone's questions.
So 2 main topics are channels and tools.
Okay.
So channels, like should the church be in TikTok or no? Do we have to have a Facebook page, web page? Like, what's the logic there?
Yeah, the cool thing about social media right now is that as it's evolved, still a pretty young space, right? Roughly 15, 20 years old, the platforms have begun to settle in with different demographics. This was not true at the beginning. Every time a new platform would come out, we would all join it, people in my age demo. Nowadays, we've kind of settled into the trendy platform of our, you know, certain demographic. It's like when you listen to music now and you're like, they don't make music like they used to. Guess what? Every generation thinks that. My generation's music is categorically bad. I was in a Latvian like pool house. We were playing billiards because we like rained out. and they're just playing Kesha over and over. And I was like, this is the music. And I was like, wait a minute, Kesha is bad, guys. Like, this music is bad, but it was my music. Same is true for social. Boomers have kind of settled on Facebook. Millennials have settled on Instagram. Gen Z is on TikTok. And Gen Alpha, which is the generation coming after Gen Z, they're like really only on YouTube Shorts because they're not allowed social media yet. But YouTube was kind of like, we're social media in the swiping phase. So choosing which platform to be active on really comes down to which people exist in your church right now. So how do you want to serve your existing congregation? And then which groups do you want to reach? What I always say that's interesting is you can never predict as a church which platform you're going to reach people on. So unless you have a moral quandary, unless you're like, ethically this is wrong, I would say be on the 4 major platforms. Be on TikTok, be on Facebook, be on Instagram, and be on YouTube Shorts. That church that I mentioned, those people came up and they said, hey, we're going to come and visit your church this Sunday. That was on a TikTok account that church started 30 days prior when we started working with them. I said, look, I don't know, maybe nothing will happen on TikTok, but we're going to make one sermon reel. We may as well publish it to 4 of the major platforms because different people exist on the different platforms.
Yeah, that's very good because also the generational question was up there with the generation, how to reach. So whoever asked that, now you know.
Yeah, 2 for 1, yeah.
Yeah, and the other one is tools. Like one thing is AI and questions, like moral questions, is it moral to use AI? How much help can you use from AI creating content? And the other thing is overall tools that are low cost or free that churches could maybe use in their media teams.
Yeah, so one tool that we use and is pretty indispensable for us is called Auphonic. It's like the word audio, A-U, and then P-H-O-N-I-C, auphonic.com. It's free. It's an audio AI tool. So let's say we're recording right now, right? And we take this, and we are. We take the audio out after, and we listen, and it's rubbing against my shirt a little bit. It doesn't sound perfect. I'll just throw this into Auphonic, and I'll let it run, and miraculously, the audio will sound like we recorded perfectly in a sound booth. So that's a great way of just getting pristine audio. I think they let you run 2 hours of free audio per month. And then if you need more than that, it's incredibly affordable. So let's say you're doing your sermons, right? And you're recording them. And let's say your mic setup isn't perfect. You can run it through there afterwards and you'll have perfect sounding audio. Okay, great. Now your sermon reel maybe starts performing a little bit better because it sounds so great. We talked about audio quality and its importance. We don't use really any scheduling tools for social. I like to use the native scheduling tools. So when I'm here and my publishing time is a little bit different, I'll actually schedule a reel inside of Instagram rather than scheduling it with another tool. But if you are looking at a scheduling tool, there's one called Vista Social, V-I-S-T-A. They run really good reports inside of their software. So I always recommend you evaluate what you've done online over a 90-day period. Any shorter than that, and it's just too small of a sample size. So you can run a report inside of Vista Social, let's say, but also, again, Instagram's native analytics, all these native analytics are good. And then I want you to do this simple exercise. Look at every post you've published and basically rank them from the most successful to the least successful. And then it's your job to look at the high performers and identify any commonalities you can see. Was the subject matter the same? Was the post format the same? Was there anything that you can see a pattern of? And then similarly, look at the lowest performers. Identify patterns. And then your job is this simple. Repeat the best, forget the rest, continue to test. The best stuff, do more of it. Because what happened was you've identified a unique crossover between your church's unique DNA, because every church is different. Every communicator is different. And what people need in this world. Because what's amazing about social is, if you've ever gone up to a pastor after they preach, good message, pastor. You know what you're not going to do? Bad message, pastor. Nobody's going to do that in person. Maybe the Estonians will actually, if there's anyone that will, maybe, and I respect that. What's great about social is you vote with your attention. There is no Canadian politeness. It's either this was good or this was bad. And so when you have something that performs well, that is really great market research that we would call in the business world. So repeat the best, forget the rest. If you're trying and you just keep posting stuff, I really want this format to work, it's not working, let it go. And then continue to test. There's always room on a social calendar, 10%, 20%, 30%, for trying something new. Because you never know when you might stumble upon a format that resonates with people. And if you don't continue to test things, you'll never have the ability to grow.
Mm-hmm. But do you have any comments on using AI?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, personally for me with AI, the big rule I have is I never want AI to be my source material. If I've come up with something, I love AI to kind of like riff on it. If it's the audio, I have the source audio and it smooths it out. If I'm using it in, let's say, photography editing, love AI. I don't have to like brush on a thing that I want to remove. AI is really good at selecting it automatically nowadays. That's a great way of using it. If I have an idea for a YouTube title or for a post format, I'll put in my idea and then say, give me a bunch of variations on this. So I think getting into AI, especially as we get more into trusting it, this is going to be a really weird thing to live through. You know, when I started talking about the biggest communication shift in 500 years, that was really related to the internet. I did not expect AI 15 years ago to be a thing. We, the people that did not grow up with AI, are likely going to be the people that are skeptical of it. So here's what's going to happen as an example. Let's say you go and you get some type of scan done on your body for health reasons. And you find out that they didn't have a doctor read the scan. They had AI read the scan. I saw some people shake their head. That's going to be us. We're going to be like, I don't want an internet, a computer reading I need the doctor to look at the MRI. The generation behind us will have the exact opposite feeling. They'll be like, a human? No, we can't trust a human. Let the robot read the scan. And so understanding kind of that dynamic, it was the same with the internet. Back in 2010, I spent so much of my time just telling churches, Facebook is okay, create a Facebook page. And I remember thinking to myself, in 15 years, we will not be having discussions like with boards nearly as much about whether we should be on the internet, because it'll just be accepted. We're gonna go through the same thing with AI. For me right now, what I'm comfortable with is letting it do its thing so long as the source material belongs to me.
Yeah, very good. I think it's a very smart idea. But all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here with the interview. And as he mentioned, while you do your group work stuff, he'll be walking around. So if you have any questions, just grab him from the sleeve. And I wanted to clarify that or ask more about that.